I'm Jasmine Moradi, and you're listening to the Queens of Tech podcast, a podcast series about raising the voice of workplace champions. 60 plus questions in around 30 to 40 minutes with women of color, non-binary, and transgender influencers about their journey into STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. I started the Queens of Tech podcast initiative in May 2022 because I would like to retain more women of color, non-binary, and transgenders in the tech industry. Talent is out there, but our work environment needs to improve for all to feel safer, stay authentic, and to be valued for our contributions. My vision is to raise the workplace ecosystem for all in tech by killing the imposter syndrome, stopping bad behavior, and increasing equity opportunities. Each podcast talk is built around 60 plus questions regarding upbringing, education, career path, DIB, and future advice. My mission is to bridge the gap between schools and workplaces by getting into the heart of my guest's personal life and career journey to inspire other girls, women of color, non-binary, and transgenders to unleash their full potential to reach top leadership roles in the tech industry. My goal is to raise the voices of tech champions around the world and together with companies, investors, and politicians, raise the challenges and opportunities around equity, inclusive, diversity, and belonging in our workplaces. Enough is enough. I would like to enforce companies to build a sustainable, inclusive culture to retain diverse talent so we keep the workforce power equity to continue building future diverse and inclusive products. Representation matters. Your voice matters. In this episode, I'm very excited to welcome my guest, Tech Queen Stacy Willis, Chief Operating Officer at Playwire. Hi, Stacy.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm very happy to have you joining us. How are you today?
I'm wonderful, excited to dig into some interesting questions.
I'm ready to get to know you. So let us dive into your journey into STEM. Hope you're ready for the Queens of Tech 60 plus question.
I'm ready.
Let's warm up with a few fun facts about you. How would you describe your personality in 3 hashtags?
Enthusiastic, inquisitive, and driven, probably the biggest.
How would you describe your life in 3 sentences or hashtags?
I went with hashtags for this one. I had full, meaningful, and joyful.
What kind of music stimulates and motivates you the most?
It depends entirely on what I'm doing. If it's deep work, classical music, preferably cello. And if I'm working out, I'm all about classic rock.
What's your personal motto?
You cannot control people, only your reaction to them.
What is your favorite book?
I don't have a favorite. I love books and I'm constantly just reading. So instead, I thought I'd just talk about what I'm currently reading, which is Unreasonable Hospitality. It's a wonderful book.
What is your favorite podcast?
I love No Stupid Questions with Angela Duckworth. I'm just fascinated by psychology and high performers.
Mac or PC?
Oh, Mac all day.
Say something interesting about you that most people don't know.
I have had a weird number of close calls in my life. So I like to think of myself as a cat with 9 lives. And I think I'm down to about 4.
What is a hidden talent?
I'm working with different kinds of people. I tend to flex well to different personality types. So I work really well with engineers to crazy social extrovert.
If you were going to write a book about your life, what would the title be?
I honestly struggle to think of this one, but it would have something to do with the combination of being a mom and marketing because they're both M's and they work together well. I just haven't workshopped the title enough.
Great start. Let us dig deeper. Our childhood has an effect on our adulthood. Our early experiences shape our belief about ourselves, others, and the world. Now, I want to dig deeper into your childhood. Where did you grow up?
Sacramento, California.
What was your dream job as a child?
I wanted to be a veterinarian until I learned you had to put down animals.
What was your favorite subject in school? Math. What was your least favorite subject?
History.
What is your earliest memory of technology and the arrival of the internet?
I remember hearing my dad play Doom on the computer and they have that like heavy background breathing.
And which were the three first technology gadgets you owned?
I had a Tamagotchi. I had the Nokia cell phone with Snake game on it. And then we had a computer at home starting when I was in elementary school.
Who was your female role model growing up and why?
I didn't have any one role model. I had a mom and a stepmom who were both very high-powered individuals, and so I'd just say it's a combination of multiple, but mostly them.
So, how do you think where you grew up and the school you went to and the generation you come from influence your education and career choice?
I think my parents were probably the biggest influence. I had a lot of engineering examples, and so I kind of went with what I knew.
Great. So, let's dig into your career. I'm going to read two quotes. First one: how does the universe expect me to choose a career path at 16? I can't even choose what I want for dinner. Second, Abraham Lincoln said, I quote, the best way to predict your future is to create it. So, Stacy, I want to know the choices behind your career path. Where and what you study at university?
I did computer engineering as my undergrad.
When what influenced you to get into your choice and field? Your parents?
Yep, you got it.
And what professional roles have you had before that led you to the current one?
I had kind of a weaving career path. I started in engineering. I went back and got my MBA, and then I found my way into technical marketing, which segued into operations over time.
So, what does Playwire do?
We help website owners monetize their site with ads, if that's the revenue stream that they would like to use.
And what is your title and what is your main responsibilities?
My current title is COO, and that responsibility is just making sure things work. So it's a very wide responsibility set.
How did you get the current role?
I started in the marketing world. I have background in client services, so I shifted into running our partner success division. And from there, I got really opinionated about our product because I had to use it to serve our customers. And so shifted into COO to work on cross-department organization over time.
So, what does a typical workday or work week look like for you?
I'm 4 hours off the time zone of our primary company, so I get up at 4 AM and work most of the morning, take a break around what most people would consider lunchtime, and that's when I take my kids to school, and then I finish early afternoon in time to pick kids up from school, so it works pretty well with my lifestyle.
I love the quote, choose a job you love and you will never have to work a day in your life. So, Stacy, what do you love about your role?
Interacting with smart people, intellectual stimulation all day, every day. When I get to have smart conversations with smart people, I'm very, very happy.
And what is the best experience you've had so far? Any examples?
We're solving big problems for our publishers in terms of finding like tiny little minute areas of additional revenue. So it's like each tiny percentage revenue increase we can eke out, we feel and see for revenue in our publishers. So it's really fun finding those little opportunities that turn into big dollars.
You said it's small and hard to find it. So, what is the biggest challenge you've encountered so far and how did you tackle that?
Biggest challenge is just the number of technology pieces in an ad tech stack. So there's hundreds of different tools out there that layer into the strategy, and something could be wrong or broken or misnamed anywhere in that entire stack. So it's often like finding a needle in a haystack looking through our tech stack.
What do you wish everybody understood about your role?
That it's mostly focused on finding people's strengths and just utilizing people to their strengths. It's not about pointing out weaknesses. It's not about anything like that. So it's really fun.
What is a common myth about your professional field that you want to disapprove?
That it's easy. Ad tech changes every minute, every hour, every day. So keeping track of changes in the industry and making sure that they don't affect our publishers is a colossal effort.
And what do you love about working in the tech industry?
That no 2 days are different. I get bored really easily, and there's no opportunity for death.
Oprah Winfrey said, I quote, think like a queen. A queen is not afraid to fail. Failure is not a stepping stone to greatness. So, Stacey, what has by far been your biggest achievement in your career?
I think coordinating 4 departments, each with 15 to 20 people to like towards a common goal is by far the hardest thing I've ever done. And it's been the most rewarding feedback I've gotten now that we've really hit our stride as a group.
And what's the biggest factors help you become successful in these success habits?
I'm very committed to my personal health, and I wouldn't be able to do anything I do if I didn't make sure that I exercised and ate well and all of that. Like, my brain doesn't work if I don't do those things. So that's a requirement.
How do you measure your own performance at work?
Publisher satisfaction and dollars delivered. Results all day.
And with success comes failures. What is your biggest failure in your career and what did you learn from it?
There's a series of small ones that always lead to learnings in the next step. I would say the thing that I feel the most is if and when I put a person in the wrong role. And that's definitely happened a few times. And feeling like I've failed both the group around them and them by not finding that perfect spot for them or not calling out sooner that it wasn't a fit.
What would you say is inspiring and motivate you the most in your role and career right now?
Having conversations with our end customers, like hearing the fact that we've been able to help them be financially independent, things like that. It's just those moments of seeing the end result of our work that jazz me up.
Let us now jump into the influence on mentors, role models, champions, and sponsors. Role models can consciously or subconsciously be a powerful force in our lives. In addition, champions can stand up and advocate for us and open up the world of possibilities. Sponsors match emerging talent with leaders and influential employees who can help us move ahead in our careers. Stacy, do you have a mentor, champion, or a sponsor today?
In my time at Playwire, definitely our CEO, Jason, has been both of those things to me. And it's the reason I've moved from the marketing all the way over into the operations role. And historically in my career, I definitely have quite a few. Kathleen Booth is one of the first bosses that I had in the marketing space, and I still call her frequently for advice.
And who is the female, non-binary, or transgender role model you look up to in your field?
Probably still put Kathleen as the biggest one there. She's one that's just been a great role model, and she's a very strong business thinker. So when I have business questions or tackling tough things, I still go to her very frequently.
And history shows that it has been more common for men having mentors, champions, and sponsors in business than women. Stacey, how important do you think is to have a mentor, champion, and sponsor during one's career?
I think it's definitely really important, particularly a champion or a sponsor who can help you learn the ropes within your own company. I think that it can come in forms that you might not expect. So don't necessarily look for it as just your boss.
Let us move on to leadership. Adina Friedman, President and CEO of Nasdaq, said, I quote, empowering those around you to be heard and valued makes a difference between a leader who simply instructs and one who inspires. And Shirley Sandberg, ex-CEO of Facebook, said, I quote, leadership is about making others better as a result of your presence and making sure that the impact lasts in your absence. Stacy, what does leadership mean to you?
Oh my gosh, I wish I could steal one of those quotes. They're so succinct. I think for me, it comes back to putting people in a position to be successful. What can I do to make all of the people around me successful? What can I get out of their way? Or how can I position them in the right place?
And what do you consider a good versus a bad leader?
Listening. I mean, if I'm as simple as possible, a really great leader is really good at listening and picking out what to do with the information that they're given to solve those problems and position people for success.
And a bad leader?
Overly directive or micromanaging.
Who is your favorite female, non-binary, and transgender tech leader and why?
I tend to follow Sheryl Sandberg a lot. I also really like Frances Fry.
How would you describe yourself as a leader?
I hope welcoming, approachable, and again, listening.
And as a leader, what values are the most important to you? Listening?
Starting to see a thread, definitely listening. Seeking to understand. So it's really easy when you're busy to hear things at the surface, but it's getting that layer deeper. So asking enough questions to truly diagnose the problem and not just react immediately to the surface level information.
And what leadership lessons have you learned that have formed you into the leader you are today?
Leadership isn't about necessarily the people who are forced to report to you. Leadership is more cross-department. And are you able to work with people even if they have no requirement to listen to you from a reporting structure perspective and make change happen?
What are your 3 strengths and 3 weaknesses?
I'll start with weaknesses. That's easier. I'm incredibly impatient. And so I constantly have to temper that down. I struggle because I'm excited and impatient with interrupting people, and that's always something that I work on. And occasionally I can be reactive, which is part of what I was talking about before, making sure you're getting that level deeper and not overly reactive. The strengths, I tend to be approachable for different personality types, so I can flex to introverts and extroverts. I can keep a lot of information in my head, which is sometimes a strength and a weakness, but that is something that helps me make quick decisions. And I'm narrowly focused on our customer and employee needs, so it's easy to make the right decision for me.
Let us now jump into the hottest topic in business today: workplace culture, unlocking the power of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Stacy, what does diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging mean to you personally?
It's creating a work-life experience that transcends different lifestyles and or requirements from outside of work. It's finding a way to make work approachable for different varying lifestyles and needs.
What do you consider being 3 to 5 signs of good company culture if you were to join a company?
The biggest and most important one is trust. Do you trust people? And do you have the systems and processes built to measure performance based on results so that you can have that trust, right? Those are really big ones. I would say flexibility around lifestyle is a big one for me as a mom and a military wife. I would not be able to work somewhere if it didn't offer flexibility to be able to get things done when and how I needed to. And then I think strong interpersonal connections, making sure that there's still place for fun and joy in the workplace.
And as a woman, what has been the most significant political or culture barrier in your career, and how have you overcome these challenges?
I honestly don't notice huge barriers in those. I tend not to focus on them. I think we often think too much about what others think of us. And so I think that's a barrier most women focus on and end up having. I've never cared enough. So I tend not to notice them being in my way and just blaze through them. But I would say flexibility and the shift from like the older traditional workplace to today's remote flexible workplace is hard for some people. There's a generational gap, I think, there. And so that's probably the biggest barrier for my life and my lifestyle that I've ever come up against. But it's not really ever stopped much for me.
Why do you think it's important for more women, women of color, non-binary, and transgender to join the tech industry today?
I think we bring a lot of the skills that we talked about. When we come back to listening, I think that's a skill that is naturally a part of us, particularly for parents. I notice moms have this skill of protection, but also listening and listening to understand what the needs are of people. And I think that's a really important skill in leadership across tech. And so I'd love to see us bring more of it.
Do you and how do you speak with your colleagues, peers, and community about DEIB challenges? For example, salary gaps, promotions, etc.
I would say that in my current role, I oversee a lot of those conversations, and it's never been something I even have to bring up. We're really good at it at our company, so I'm very fortunate. I think the biggest area that I provide influence is showing an example of somebody who can get things done in a leadership role, but still balancing being a mom to 2 small kids and a military wife and the life that comes with that. I think it gives a lot of people in our organization the visibility that it's okay to have a life outside of work and that you can still make progress at work.
You did mention that you haven't directly been affecting you, but there are many public and internal discussion about the barriers women, women of color, non-binary, and transgender face from reaching high position in the tech industry or receiving funding. How do you feel it has affecting you? But most of all, what is your advice on how to best unblock these roadblocks?
Like I said, I've never really experienced it myself. I feel very fortunate. It's never been a focus of mine to think about the difference between male and female. It's just, hey, this is what I want to do. This is my decision and I'm moving forward with it. So I would say women, the best thing they can probably do for them is likely to not worry about what others think of you or fighting for yourself. We tend to feel like, oh, is this going to cause problems? Is this going to reflect negatively on me? And worrying less about what others think of us allows us to move forward and blaze through some of those glass ceilings, if you will.
And as you said, your company seems to be doing the DIB very well. Today, tech companies do spend a lot of marketing money to attract women of color, non-binary, and transgenders. However, at the same time, they're finding it hard to retain them. There are articles online showing that women are leaving the tech industry. So I would love to know your best advice or strategies for how companies can work to build a stronger corporate culture that engages DIB, as it seems that you guys have been succeeding in that area.
I think a focus on leadership positions will probably help unlock the flood of the rest of the company. I think having women in leadership positions, not as favoritism over males, but focusing on how can I make sure that there are women in leadership positions creates a little bit more of the visibility that it will help the lower levels feel like they're confident and comfortable in moving up. So that tends to unlock the larger picture, is focusing first on finding females to fill leadership roles within the organization.
What would you say are the few factor of challenges of implementing a DIB culture in a workplace in a tech industry today? Because some are not succeeding as much as your company seems to do.
The biggest challenge, particularly in the tech industry, is just the percentages of people coming out of college with the appropriate skill set, right? Like, you're still constantly fighting a battle that you're 70+% of your applicants are not going to be one of the minority categories. So it's making sure that you're visible in the hiring process across different groups, and that you're, in my mind, that if you're really attracting some of the deeper in their career skills, like people within the minority categories, you got to offer the flexibility they need, especially women, if they're going to be parents. That's the biggest thing, I think, and it opens up future gaps. So it's like what's the saying? The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is today. It's opening up that flexibility today means in months or years down the line, the rest of your organization will have a lot more of those different categories filled out.
I did mention about the women of color, non-binary, and transgender leaders. But why and how do you think companies would benefit for also having representation at C-suite level and boardrooms with actual mandate, for example, where you are sitting right now?
I never think a mandate is the right choice, because it's going to cause you to pick somebody who's not necessarily a fit for the role in order to fill out the mandate. It ends up doing a disservice, because if you pick somebody who's not the right fit just to fill it, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. That person then didn't perform, and then category is bad, right? I definitely don't think mandates are the right fit. I think it's really about hoping you can find the right candidate is huge, right? Making sure you are evaluating a really wide array of people for those C-suite positions, and making sure that women are among the consideration set. Now, that doesn't mean that if they're not the right fit for the role, that you should be directly putting them in the role, but just making sure the consideration set is diverse is the best thing that I would say, and then pick the right person for the job.
What would you say is the biggest reason behind that we don't have more women of color, non-binary, and transgender leaders in a tech leadership roles and as startup founders still today?
Most C-suite positions don't have space for life in a lot of companies. So the company first has to invest in making sure that their C-suite roles have space for life outside, and that everybody on the C-suite is comfortable giving people space for that. So I'm very fortunate that we have great work-life balance where I live, and I can be a C-suite member and still have my life outside of work, my kids, and all of that.
Also, another thing that is a bit challenging is that the data reveals a concerning trend of low funding rates for startups led by women, with only 1 to 2% of the funding directed towards women in the tech industry. Black and Latino women in particular receive less than 1%. You haven't directly, like your company, I don't know, are you working with funding?
We do, but any and all funding that was brought in would have been before I was on the C-suite anyway, so we would definitely be in that male if we're talking about the numbers.
So what factor do you believe contributes to this imbalance, and what strategies can be achieved to increase funding for women-led startups?
I think I'd want to look at the data more to just understand if the percentages match, right? Does the percentage of funding going to women-led businesses match just the percentage of women-led businesses? I'm not sure. If it's definitely like a mix, I think VCs probably will want to try and make sure that they're increasing their diversity and consideration set in their funding. And it's probably about the only way to solve it if it's not a match.
And how much do you think the tech industry has changed regarding the IB since you joined?
I started my career in large companies, and I definitely noticed that there's a very strong push there I would say I have never come across any major roadblocks to my growth and my success within the tech industry. So I can't say that I've felt a big change myself, but mostly because I don't think I've ever hit any major blockages.
So looking back on your career, would it be anything that you would have changed in your working environment to break the bias? Was there anything you saw for somebody else?
I would say the thing that I've noticed across my career is that other women will feel biases where I have not noticed them. And it could just be that I'm fully oblivious and just blaze on through it. So I'd say that it's ignoring them, frankly. Like if there is a bias out there that you feel against you, ignore it and move forward anyway. By accident, I think that might be what happened to me that stopped me from having those barriers.
Looking forward, what will you do as a leader to improve the bias for the next generation of women of color, non-binary, and transgenders in tech?
I think the best thing each and every female can do is to be the example themselves. And the more examples we have of kick-ass women in tech leadership roles, the more the bias just fizzles away.
Let us now move on to another hot topic in business today, which is work-life balance and mental health. Stacy, you have without a doubt a busy lifestyle. You like trading, you like flexibility. So how do you take care of yourself to maintain good mental health?
I take a cold shower every morning and I work out as soon as I get done with work every day. And those two things help me wake up at 4 a.m. and then keep my sanity.
Have you ever experienced burnout?
Oh, yeah. My motivation tends to work on a cycle, and I usually have gotten pretty good at recognizing when I'm on the edge of burnout and take some steps to step back before it pushes over the edge. But it's pretty much through trial and error that I've learned that.
What is the advice how companies can create a more mentally healthy workplace in the new now?
I think it comes back to trust and measurement on results rather than hours. We default to saying, hey, are you working this many minutes a day? Because we don't know how else to measure. And so defining result-based metrics and making sure that your team is hitting goals, it helps instill that trust that you don't need to be micromanaging minutes.
What motivates you every day to get out of bed?
The people I work with and the people we serve as customers.
Now, let us wrap up with a few words of wisdom and a piece of advice for our listeners. Stacy, what is the best piece of advice you've been given that has helped you during setbacks in your rolling career?
The best compliment I've ever been given didn't seem like a compliment, but it turned into the best advice. Somebody once told me, you don't have a high need to be liked. And at first I didn't know what that meant. But after a while, it comes back to that. I wasn't really that worried about what other people thought of me. I was worried about hitting the result of whatever role I was in. At the end of the day, if you hit the result that's expected of you, the liking follows.
And then what is the worst advice you ever been given and how did you tackle that?
To dial back my enthusiasm, I think is actually a big part of who I am and why I'm successful. So I'm glad I ignored that one.
And is there something you wish you would have known or a skill you wish you had when starting out in the tech industry?
Every skill comes with reps. So I couldn't have had something without the experience and the trial and error of figuring it out and failing at it first. I think it comes with failure.
And if you had the ability to go back in time to when you were just at the beginning of your career, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Everything is temporary, hard things and positive things. Just enjoy in the moment when you have something good and don't stress too hard when something is bad. It shall pass.
And what advice would you give to young girls, women of color, non-binary, and transgenders who want and trying to break into STEM fields today, especially wanting to become next generation leaders?
Don't accept compromise. Go for what you want and accept nothing less.
Last but not least, Stacy, what is next for you in your role in career in tech? What are your career aspirations?
We have some big product advancements we're working on getting out the door. Seeing those come to fruition will be my next really big happy milestone.
I'm looking forward to seeing that. Thank you very much, Stacy, for being guest on the Queens of Tech podcast. Sharing your journey will without a doubt inspire change and reshape company culture for the next generation of women of color, non-binary, and transgender leaders in tech.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. If you have worked in the tech industry a minimum 3 years and would like to share your journey, please nominate yourself or somebody you know to i@jasminemaradi.com. For more podcast episodes and to learn more about the Queens of Tech initiative, and to support us, visit queensof.tech.